I'm pleased to be here today and welcome you to TransLink's 2015 Annual General Meeting. I would first like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today and operate transit services throughout traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And I would also like to welcome Mayor Richard Stewart of Coquitlam. Thank you for being here. Before getting into any formalities, I would also like to point out that this morning we are technically holding two meetings. The first being the 2015 Annual General Meeting for TransLink, which I now formally call to order. And the second, which will follow, will be the open June board meeting, and that will start around 10 o'clock. This meeting, this Annual General Meeting, is primarily to report on TransLink's 2015 year. We will then give you an opportunity to ask questions and provide your input about transit-related issues. After the open mic session, the AGM will formally end, and after a short break, the board meeting will begin. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleagues on the board of directors who have joined us today. And I'm going to ask the directors to please stand when I call your name. And I ask you as well to hold any applause until I've introduced all the directors. That's expecting you will want to applaud. Larry Beasley, Jim Chu, Lorraine Cunningham, Murray Dinwiddie. Brenda Eaton could not be here today. Barry Forbes, Tony Gugliotta, Mayor Linda Hepner I don't see. I expect she will be here sometime this morning. Mayor Gregor Robertson and Marcella Sale. And that is our board of directors. Well, I had to do that by myself. As we reflect on TransLink's past year, there were two major stories. In the spring, a plebiscite put transit funding to a vote. And in the fall, TransLink began the rollout of the Compass card. By the year end, there were 350,000 active Compass cards and 77 million taps across the system. These events captured the attention of residents and began conversations that continue to this day. While those events were at the center of transportation conversations in 2015, I want also to recognize other significant TransLink initiatives and projects that focus on three key areas: enhancing customer service, investing in transit, roads, and cycling, and building a sustainable transportation system. First, TransLink is committed to enhancing our customers' experience by providing customers with a service that's efficient, safe, reliable, and comfortable. In 2015, more than 6,900 dedicated employees across the organization looked for ways to improve customer experience. We responded to over 1.6 million calls and emails. We received 2.5 million tweets. We had nearly 900,000 Twitter followers, over 17,000 Facebook followers, and 91,000 Transit Alert subscribers. TransLink maintained a customer satisfaction rating of 7.5 out of 10 for the overall system. Our customers rated satisfaction for value for money at 7.2 out of 10, the highest level ever. And TransLink and the operating companies were ranked among BC's top employers for 2015. Second, TransLink invested in transit, roads, and cycling. 2015 saw progress on several major capital projects. Investing in the transit system, roads, and cycling ensures that we will continue to deliver safe and reliable service to our customers for years to come. In 2015, upgrades to the Main Street SkyTrain stations were completed. Construction began on upgrades to Metrotown, Commercial Broadway, and US Minster stations. Improvements to the 26-kilometer multi-use BC Parkway were completed. They included new ramps, lighting and signage, and repaving broken pathways, making the parkway safer and more accessible. The new King George Bike Parkade opened, doubling the capacity of existing bike lockers. Last but not least, TransLink continues to build a sustainable transportation system. TransLink is a leader in sustainability. This includes purchasing more fuel-efficient vehicles and using energy-efficient practices every day. Some examples include, since its inception, our anti-idling program has saved over 500,000 liters of fuel. Since 2011, facility greenhouse gas emissions have decreased by 23.8%. And 31 new 40-foot compressed natural gas conventional buses have been put into service with a quieter ride, reduced carbon emissions, and lower maintenance costs. These new buses replaced diesel buses that had reached the end of their service life. For these and other initiatives, the American Public Transportation Association recognized TransLink with platinum level status for our sustainability commitment. We are the first in Canada and one of only 4 in North America to achieve this status. And we will continue to look for opportunities to reduce our carbon footprint and show our commitment to conservation. Now I'd like to invite our Chief Financial Officer, Kathy McClay, to address you. Kathy will highlight some of the significant financial results of 2015.
Hello everyone, and welcome. As CFO, my job is to keep the financial house in order and ensure the taxpayers' money is well spent. All to ensure that we deliver a great customer experience and cost-efficient service. The people of this region, including everyone in this room, fund our services through taxes and fares. We recognize that managing our funding is a great responsibility, and I'm always looking for ways to make TransLink better and more cost efficient. I'm happy to report that we ended 2015 in a strong financial position, adding more than $79 million of savings to our bottom line. This brings the total efficiencies we've achieved since 2012 to more than $320 million. In regards to our revenue and expenditures, we closed close to break even and ended the year with a modest surplus, and that will go into our cumulative resources. A key indicator for our overall financial health is what our credit rating agencies and investors say about us. Independent credit rating agencies, Moody's Investor Services, and Dominion Bond Rating Agencies reaffirmed our AA credit rating and recognized our strong financial management and diverse revenue sources in their review. Now, investors, they can put their money anywhere, but they choose us because they know their money will be well managed. We are the only transportation agency in Canada to issue bonds. In 2015, our 7th and 8th bond issues brought a combination of $150 million for financing roads and capital projects. Since 2010, we have raised over $1 billion in capital markets. This money directly benefits transportation improvements in this region. 2015 also saw the largest number of riders on our system to date, serving over 238.8 million journeys across the network, an increase of 1.8%. We expect this number to continue to grow as the population grows in this region. And with the ridership increases, the transit revenue increased 3.2% in 2015 and covered 51.8% of the transit service operating costs, which is among the best cost recovery in North America. We've also been able to sustain a consistently high level of transit service and delivered 6.8 million service hours in 2015. As I mentioned, our financial resources put us in a great place for 2016. And we're ready to take on the challenges ahead. Fast forward to today, we're ready to go on the projects moving forward as a result of the funding commitment made last week with all 3 levels of government. As we move forward, I will exert the same scrutiny over our spend and our dollars as we do today. And I remain steadfast to my commitment to ensure TransLink delivers on its expectations of our customers, taxpayers, and our investors. In closing, I will turn the floor over to our CEO, Kevin Desmond, who has some thoughts on where the future will take us from here. Welcome, Kevin, to our first annual general meeting.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Don, as well. And thank you for the additional microphone. My role as the Chief Executive Officer is to lead the good work of this fine organization and to support an enduring consensus in our region to manage the overall capacity of our very, very constrained transportation network. That is job number 1, as I see it, for me and ultimately for TransLink and our mission. As both Don and Kathy mentioned, 2015 was an interesting year of both advances and, frankly, many questions about TransLink, a situation that I happened to be watching from afar in Seattle before I came up and took this position. Despite the turmoil, there are many successes that we can speak to in 2015 that both Don and Kathy mentioned. And I think that's a testament, frankly, to the dedication of all of the employees of TransLink and its subsidiary organizations. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've said this many times in public. As I've observed this organization and what the Lower Mainland, the Vancouver metropolitan area has accomplished over many years, I've seen this as a world-class transit organization, a world-class transit system in a region that is very, very committed to sustainability and smart growth going forward. And I'm delighted to be here and leading the approximately 6,900 employees of TransLink to work with all of our partner organizations in the region to continue that fine trend. TransLink, as I can see it in my 3 months on the job, has a strong commitment to running an efficient and customer-focused organization. If we're focused on the customer, relentlessly focused on the customer here at TransLink, we're directing our energies in the right place all the time. And it then flows through all the things that we have to do each and every day to accomplish our mission. That focus is more important than ever as we face welcoming 1 million more residents to this region by the year 2040, by all forecasts. More residents mean more competition for housing and jobs, increased congestion in our struggling transportation network, and impacts on the movement of goods throughout the region. Thus, better transportation and infrastructure is critical. Just last month, the Vancouver Board of Trade released its economic scorecard for this region and highlighted transportation and transit are one of the key factors affecting the region's livability and future prosperity, along with housing affordability, which is in the news each and every day in our region. We agree with the Board of Trade's assessment that, quote, cementing Greater Vancouver's status as a Canadian economic leader requires a commitment to invest in its transportation grid and public transportation infrastructure, unquote. We need investment and action to improve the flow not only of people but of goods and cargo, which is crucial to our local businesses and the health of our broader economy. We have a blueprint called a Mayor's Council Vision to help direct our next steps, and TransLink is ready to go. As of last week, funding commitments from 3 levels of government means that we'll soon be able to start some of the projects that will make that vision a reality at long last. Of course, this is the 2015 Annual General Meeting, so looking back, I want to demonstrate that the system is doing well, despite no significant new funding sources over the last number of years. There are improvements to be made, things that we can do as an organization with or without new funding, but clearly the additional funding is absolutely crucial to ultimately assist our ability to improve the capacity of the network. I want to just repeat some of the things that both Don and Kathy have mentioned because I think they're important. 239 million journeys across our integrated transit system was the highest ridership since 1999. Our Compass program and our Compass customers are tapping in and out of the system more than 1 million times each day. For example, at the end of 2015, there were more than 350,000 Compass cards in active use and 77 million taps. Today, there are more than 900,000 Compass cards in active use. That represents almost 1 in 3 residents in our region have a Compass card and are using it. Each and every public event that I go to, I ask folks who has a Compass card. Almost everyone raises their hand. It's really wonderful to see that. As well, by reallocating bus service across the system from areas of low productivity to where customers need it the most, we were able to increase service frequencies on a number of routes to reduce overcrowding. Importantly, the south of Fraser region experienced the largest increase in new service in many, many years. 81,000 annual service hours were reallocated to meet growing demand in that growing subregion. This area in particular has seen an increase in 5 million annual bus boardings since 2011, the highest growth in the region. And by all forecasts, that demand trend will continue, and we need to be very focused in that area of our region. C-Bus ridership has remained steady over the past few years. There were some 6.1 million recorded boardings in 2015. If it were a bus route, it would be the 10th most used route in our system. SkyTrain passenger volumes at stations continue to increase, and data shows that weekend ridership is similar to weekday ridership outside of peak periods, just reflecting on the broad-based use and importance of that system. In 2015, we worked on a number of different projects, some of which Don mentioned. The 11-kilometer Evergreen Extension Project, the construction was moving along apace, traveling from Coquitlam and Port Moody and offering a one-seat ride into Vancouver. We'll be talking about that project more as in our board meeting later on. But once the Evergreen project opens early next year, our SkyTrain system will once again be the longest automated rapid transit system in the world. I think a point of pride, frankly, for this region. It's a wonderful system. 2015 saw the completion or significant progress in 4 of the station upgrades. Main Street Science World was completed, and we got started work at Metrotown, Commercial Broadway, and New Westminster. Importantly, these station upgrades and the future station upgrades that are programmed in the Mayor's Plan not only provide more capacity in the stations in a more appealing environment, they make the system more accessible as well, with more elevator access, more escalator access. They will be safer and additional capacity for our customers. We've also replaced 4,500 linear meters of rail in the 30-year-old SkyTrain system. Just last month, we were celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the expo line. It's great history, it's a great legacy, but it also means 30 years old is pretty old. And we need to continue to be very, very focused on the state of good repair of our system. And that's embedded in our capital program and a focus of the management team here at TransLink. We don't proceed with these projects, with projects of this scope, without robust consultation. A few examples of outreach and consultation projects last year aimed at improving the customer experience and increased ridership include the Downtown Bus Service Review, the Northeast Sector Area Transit Plan, the Compass Education Campaign, and the Transit Network Consultation, which to date had been our largest service-related consultation ever. We received more than 12,000 completed surveys, and I think a point of pride for the team as they were continuing to improve the way TransLink does public consultations. Although this is a 2016 project, I think it shows the commitment to public consultation. We just launched a fare policy review a few weeks ago, and after I think just 3 weeks out in the public through an online survey, we have over 25,000 responses to that online survey, showing a great deal of interest, not only in the issue itself of fare policy, but I interpret that as a great deal of interest in the future of TransLink and our transit system. Before wrapping up, I want to talk about the way forward and what we're looking at in the future. We certainly face real challenges, and I'm keenly interested in looking at all of these. We have considerable overcrowding in our service. On the bus side, many, many routes overcrowded. Pass-ups, people who just can't get on the bus, they have to wait for successive buses. The SkyTrain system during peak periods, I've been on those trainings where they're jam-packed with people, and it's growing every day. We need better service. We need more service to relieve the overcrowding. We need more service to provide routes where there is underserved that are underserved today. We need better customer information tools. Don mentioned a lot of our social media activity. I think those numbers are terrific. We can do better on our customer information tools in the digital environment, including improving our transit alert system and real-time information. We have an automated SkyTrain system that most people rely on every day. Now, when it breaks down, which is not very often, it's a major issue for our customers, their families, and the businesses that employ them. We need to continue to work on our state of good repair and continue to work on the way that we can communicate with our customers when we do have those disruptions. But that is a system that is otherwise operating at very, very strong on-time performance. Finally, we want to continue to work with the Mayor's Council and our provincial partners to find the new sources of funding and innovative ways of developing and evolving the region's transportation network to keep our region flowing. That's job number one right now as far as I see it for my role in working with our partners going forward. TransLink has a history of delivering, and we're going to deliver on the Mayor's plan. We're going to deliver on the promise of this organization and the promise of transportation capacity management in this region. So I'll turn it back over to Don Rose, and we can begin the public question and answer session.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to ask Jennifer if you would please coordinate this open session.
So with that, we'll take the first question. So just raise your hands and you can.
It is half an hour, you're saying?
It's half an hour, yes. First question.
Thank you for the opportunity to pose this question. My name is Ian Smith. I'm a resident of Maple Ridge, BC. Last month I was reading through the statutory annual report, and it mentioned that a new agreement had been concluded between West Coast Express and Canadian Pacific Railway, the service agreement. Excuse me. Knowing that this document must be released under the Canada Transportation Act to anybody who requests it, I did submit a request to TransLink a month ago for that document, and I've heard nothing at all about it. So I'd like to know what TransLink policy is on the release of a document that must be released according to federal law.
We do have an FOI process where we take those requests in and then manage that. So perhaps if there's somebody that can speak to more detail about FOIs, we can come in and follow up with you after the session. Next question.
So the thing is that it's a concern about with the compass card. Because I noticed right now, with what happened is, I've tried different ways, because I was one of the beta testers as well, so I did try using different ways of tapping compass cards. I noticed right now, the really only way that we can tap our cards is using, is either just carrying it or using a plastic speed folder or something. So, and I've used tracking smart cards in other places, other places around the world, and their machines are really sensitive, where we're able to tap through things like cell phone cases or wallets and stuff. So isn't that something that we can do here, so that people don't have to always take the cards out of because for me, I really prefer holding my compass card in my cell phone case, but for the reason is that it doesn't always work, so I can't really do it. And so I was wondering if it's something we can actually increase the sensitivity of the card reader, so that would work. And my other one that's related to compass card is, in the event of right now, when we have a big event, let's say a hockey game or something, is there a way that they can keep all the periods open and all the diving stations, so we can just walk right through rather than slowing it down and having it really tap?
So first and foremost, thank you for being one of our testers on the compass card. As you know, we've had a long ramp-up period for compass, and one of the things we really wanted to do is make sure it works before we rolled it out to the general public. One of the things is we did want to make sure the technology worked, and so making sure that it was a clear, clean tap so that customers weren't overcharged or undercharged. Now that we're very comfortable with the technology, we are looking at many different ways to tap on your system. And as we move forward to next year, we're looking forward to doing a new Compass called 2.0, which is going to take in a lot of the feedback that we hear from our customers and incorporate it into the new version of it. As far as big events, we do, again, we're testing it as we go forward. We are trying to figure those pieces out. We are now doing directional, so at those big events, so instead of going forward and backwards on the gates, we're going to have them only go in one direction on the top. The top is really important to us for many reasons. Because it allows us to know who's using our system and who's on our system at any given time, as well as the pay mechanism. The speed of our system is working very effectively, but we'll take that away and we'll look at that as well in Compass 2.0. But again, thank you for using our Compass products.
I would add the two gentlemen, sir, the two gentlemen just to your right are actually our two Compass managers, and they can give you all the detail you want on the proximity issues and the sensitivity and how you can use the card through your wallet or so forth. So maybe after the meeting that you can chat with them on some of the technical aspects.
Thank you. We'll take the next question over here.
I'm Brian Buckler. I'm the founder of the Lower Mainland Commuter Rail Consortium. We've been doing a lot of work with BC Transit, TransLink. It's a community-involved group. We have a lot of people. There's a couple of questions, but first of all, I want to congratulate the Mayor of Vancouver on the Arbutus line. That line there was sheet of rust for years. The Canadian Pacific wouldn't move. He's the mayor, and that is history. This year, the 125th anniversary of the BC Terms. It ended in 1891. It brought the country together by rail. That was part of it. Secondly, we want to congratulate TransLink on the access for disabilities. A lot of people have said that the disabilities improvement of getting on and off SkyTrain, the West Coast Express has been great. But we ran into one problem, and we're not sure if you can solve it. The people who make the buggies for the mothers, sometimes there's 2 days in them, they're long. They're making more bigger carts for people who are disabled, and they're having trouble getting on the buses, like around the fare box and things like that. And since you ordered new buses, I'm kind of prompting to think, are we getting wider doorways in the buses and things like that? Because it seems like there's a lot more disabled people around with bigger problems, and that's the only access they have. They can't drive.
I don't know the specific answer on the current design specifications for new bus orders, but I am aware from my previous job that increasingly we're seeing larger wheelchairs and other vehicles on the buses, and I think that is becoming more of a North American issue. So that's an issue I'm sure we need to be working with our manufacturers on. So I will check into that going forward on what it looks like for future orders. We do try to have the state-of-the-art equipment, working with our suppliers, and the accessibility of our system is very, very important to TransLink. So we will continue to make sure our system is as accessible as it can be, and one of the leaders in North America on that.
Perfect, thank you.
And we've got 2 questions over here, so we'll start with the lady there in the blue shirt.
Thank you very much. I have a very probably common question, but I'm hoping that you will give me an answer that I can understand. I'm sure you understand, or you have read the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that guarantees us certain freedoms: freedom of association, right to life, and right of mobility. And of course, the problem really is that with the freedom of mobility and the freedom of association, and it doesn't say just humans, that also means that people with a conscience, we have a freedom of conscience also, should be able to get around with their large dogs on a leash or in a carrier. I mean, they can't be in a carrier, on a leash. And the thing is that when people cannot get around with their dog, that increases the social isolation and loneliness problem, which is splattered all over the newspapers all the time. And people, that they say in the newspapers that that's worse for a human being than it is for a person to smoke, drink, or be obese, for causing death. And so therefore, people need to be able to get around with their large dogs on the public transit, and it works in other cities. London, England, Toronto, you know the other cities. And can you please give me a reason why, and also in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, it says that we are guaranteed the right to not be discriminated against. And after the word discrimination, there's a comma, and then it says such as or something. But the main thing is that we're not supposed to be discriminated against. 61% of Canadian households have one or more pets. That's over half. BC, Ontario, is the only province that it says that, or the landlords have the right to say no pets. Every other province and territory, the landlords have the right to say no pets and to evict you if you have a pet or you bring one in. So if people are having 61% of Canadian households and only one province, it's not allowed to evict, that's a huge number of people who love animals and a very tiny number of people who don't like animals. And so I'm saying, can you give me a valid reason that everyone can understand why you are not allowing pets, large dogs specifically, on the transit? I also have to say, when I was taking advantage of the free transit on New Year's Eve, I took my cat with me to go and explore the city of Vancouver because I was new. And before I got on, the bus driver saw that I was there with the cat, and he said to everyone on the bus, "Are you allergic? Anyone here allergic?" And he wasn't going to let me on the bus because I had a cat. And it was after New Year's Eve in a lonely place, and I didn't know my way around. And that's terrible for a woman to be stranded in a lonely place on New Year's Eve when people are doing drugs and alcohol, like on a big way. And I thought, this is dangerous. What if a kid was going with their large dog and they got refused? The bus driver said, "Oh, he's had lots of tourists who are with their dog and they're trying to get on the transit and they can't because they don't have the right carrier." And people are really stuck. Can you give me a valid reason for why it works everywhere else and why you say it won't here when we have a Charter of Rights and Freedom guarantee of mobility?
So thank you for that feedback, and that's something that I will look into. It's something that I'm familiar with in transit systems. So I think your point of how we compare to the other transit systems in the country is a good one, and we should look at that and try to figure out if we can be consistent across the nation. The challenge and the trade-off is that we have very overcrowded services in many ways. So we've got to make sure we find a correct balance between the needs of all of our customers and folks who want to bring assistive animals or their pets on board. But we will look into that, and I will actually ask one of the staff here. We can we'll chat with you after the meeting and give you the exact details of the policy. But it is something we will look into for sure. Thank you.
And the next question at the front here.
Thanks for having us here. A couple questions. First one, the transit system caters to customer service, which is very important. How come there are no public washrooms at the SkyTrain stations? That's an obvious concern for many people. Number two, second question. I used to work in security for a few years, and I noticed with the security of ex-RCMP officers or police officers, it was brought to the media's attention, the media brought it up to have, what about security guards that are well qualified and trained to secure the system? That would save a lot of money for TransLink in the end as well, having security guards properly trained. Those are my issues.
So I'll answer the second question. I'll ask Kathy maybe to talk about the first question and kind of the historical development of SkyTrain with public restrooms. We have a new chief of police here, Doug Laporte. He started I think he started the same week I started here at, so about 3 months. And Chief Laporte is engaged in a extensive review of our security program going forward. So I appreciate your point of view in the mix of security guards, non-commissioned officers, and law enforcement officers on the police side. So that is something that we are looking at and looking at very closely. It's having the commitment to providing a secure system for all of our customers and all of our modes of service is very important to us. I believe the police are doing a very good job. I believe our security group that supports the bus operation is doing a good job. I think we can better integrate those operations going forward. So that is something that Chief Lepard and the executive team here is looking at. In terms of the design of the SkyTrain system and restrooms, maybe Kathy can offer some historical reference points. Excuse me. I will say that public restrooms are a challenge for public transportation organizations anywhere in the world. So again, there's a trade-off between the cost and security issues associated with open public restrooms, and that is an enduring issue for any transit system that I've been aware of throughout my career. So Kathy maybe can add a little bit on the history on the system.
Sure. And thank you. And it is one of those debates that we have on a fairly regular occurrence, especially when we do upgrades to our stations. So the original stations were not built to facilitate restroom facilities. The new stations, we are plumbing them in so that they can have facilities. The challenge that we have going forward, it really is around the safety and security of our passengers. As you can well imagine, what issues we would have in these washroom facilities. So they would need full-time security people to be able to help with that around the system, washroom facilities. We are working at looking at what that would take going forward and looking for partners on many of our new stations, especially as we build more and more integrated developments around our stations. So stay tuned, it is a very hot topic and one that we need to wrestle to the ground.
Thank you.
Next question, just over here. Oh, sir, did you have a question, sir? Okay, perfect.
Good morning, Mr. Disman. My question is to you. You made a statement saying that we have the bird class, that's a general word we use in Canada. Have you ever been to any other countries in Western Europe, Japan, and see those, or you're comparing with the United States?
I've been to South America, Asia, and Europe. I've been all over
Have you been
the
to
world
Japan, specifically Japan?
I've been to Japan, yes.
How do you compare Canadian transit system compared to Japanese transit system?
Well, I mean, that's a very broad statement.
No,
I've
let's
been to-
take it for, right?
I've
We
been
have the
to-
worst one in this country. No, you can't compare. You can compare it to the United States, but not with Japan. We need speed, cleanliness in the transit, which we don't have. Second question is this. What is the police officer doing in this organization? That's what I want to know.
Police officers in this organization are providing for the
No, we have a
security of
new
our
C- we
customers
have a
and
new
employees
director.
every day.
We have a new director which has come from police department. What is his role?
The chief of police,
Yeah. Who
What
was
is
in
his
police
role?
department?
he is a member of the executive team of TransLink, and he is in charge of the entire TransLink police force, which is an ongoing operation, each and every day looking after the security of our customers, the general public, and our employees.
And the police is not doing their duty well.
I appreciate your feedback, and that's something we will take. Thank you.
I think that is the same position as our national police is, or the RCMP is. It's going to the same status. If you approach a police officer, he should help us, not talk rudely. I approached a couple of police officers in TransLink, they talk to you rudely.
Well, I appreciate that feedback, and that is actually something that I've had discussions directly with Chief Lepard. He's bringing a new, fresh perspective to the police, and the policing for the transit system, because our job here, my job and everyone else in this room and all of our employees, is providing good customer service every day. And I guarantee you Chief Lepard believes that as well, starting with customer service. So your point about how the police interact with our customers each and every day is important to the transit police, in addition to and in connection with maintaining the security of the system and enforcing the laws and the regulations of TransLink. So I appreciate that feedback. That is good feedback. You're not the first who has made it an observation on the transit police, and that is something I know that the transit police and the new chief are looking into. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move on to somebody else just so that we can try to give some other people opportunities for questions. So just right here.
Hi, I know it's early stages of the new funding agreement that's been put in place, but within the 10-year framework of the Mayor's Council vision, there's sort of the regional B-lines that were intended to be put in place, particularly in south of the Fraser. Do you know what the time frame of being able to look at sort of that kind of expansion would be, or if that's within the construct of what we're looking at within this Phase 1 agreement?
I believe there are 11 B-lines planned in the 10-year plan. Tim Savoy, who is two people to your right, is nodding, our head of planning. The B-lines would be rolled out over time. I believe about half of the B-lines would be rolled out in the first 5 years and the other half in the second 5 years. The exact sequencing of which lines would go first is something that we need to work out with the Mayor's Council and our board. But with the really positive announcement last week from the Prime Minister and the Premier and the mayors, I think we are seeing that progress is going to be made, and we really look forward to working with the mayors and the board in the weeks ahead, actually, to start laying out a more fine-grained implementation plan.
I'm only seeing one hand up, so we can go back to the back of the room there for a follow-up question.
So I've got 3 questions that are kind of like combined together. They're all related to like buses. And so the first thing is I've noticed that right now, like as new buses are getting put into the system, too many of them have like sideways facing seats. And I'm not sure how many people have bugs, but like for me myself, sitting in sideways seating actually makes me get motion sickness. So like often, like if all the other seats are taken, I've got no other choice but they stand. So is there a reason as to why so many buses now have sideways seating? And my other two is like another one is like I noticed this what's happening, and like it's the lights on the buses and the SkyTrains right now during the refurbishment systems. They're changing them over from fluorescent tubes over to LEDs, and I find like I know, and I've talked to a lot of people as well. Like LED lighting is like really harsh to the eyes and stuff. So is there a reason as to why they're retrofitting them out? They're not just keeping the fluorescent tubes in there. And then the last question is, I noticed when other places around the world, and like in Asia, and even like in Japan, like in other cities I've used before, they have like USB ports or actually like actual plugs on board to allow for like charging of cell phones and stuff while passengers are on board. Is that something that we can look into doing? Because I know right now the C buses and the Canada line, and as well as the West Coast Express, currently have power outlets on board, so we're able to do phone charging while on board. And then, so is that something that we can incorporate into buses or add them to the Expo Millennium Line trains as well?
Okay, in order, transverse seating. A couple of different reasons. The buses, in part, particularly the urban buses that carry a lot of people and get crowded, we need to find a way to make sure there's enough circulation but also seating for folks. So the seating design, 2x2, 2x1, transverse seating and so forth, is an important consideration for the capacity of the bus. So buses that have a lot of turnover of people that get very, very crowded, we tend to try to have somewhat fewer seated seats so that more people can stand, so we get more people on the bus because their trips tend to be shorter. The second reason for transverse seating has a lot to do with low floor buses. So back in the day when all of our buses were high floor, you had the platform, if you will, where you could then have seats that would be side by side. But in the low floor buses with the wheel wells, that tends to be where a lot of the transverse seats are. They're on top of the wheel wells, and that's the most efficient way to get enough seating. If you were doing normal seating, 1 by 1, you'd actually have fewer seats on the bus without any additional room for standees. So I understand the issue. I have sort of the same issues with transverse seating, but it's a matter of finding that right balance of capacity and comfort on the buses. LED lighting, you heard Mr. Rose point out that this organization very proudly is very focused on energy efficiency and sustainability, the platinum from the American Public Transportation Association on our sustainability. LED lights are far, far more energy efficient. They are coming. They are the future of lighting in any kind of environment, whether it's on board a moving vehicle, whether it's in our facilities, whether it's in your home. So LED lighting, far more energy efficient better life cycle costs than any other kind of lighting that's out there now. I do know that over time that the harshness of LED lighting is improving as LEDs are becoming more and more available as a consumer product. Thirdly, good point on USB ports. I know that they are much more common on trains than on buses. Whether or not buses, in terms of the design of the bus and the power load on the buses use a lot of power. Whether or not our manufacturers, our suppliers of buses can find ways to do USB ports, really good idea. When you go out the door, you'll see on the far wall over there a new kiosk that we're working with our advertising company on, that we're putting at rail stations, at skytrain stations, where people will be able to plug in for free to charge up their phones and so forth.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of our question period, so we have time for 2 more questions. So if you take a question right here. Sure.
Pending the release of the West Coast Express CP contract, I wonder if I could ask a substantive question. In Maple Ridge, where I live, the successful mayoral candidate had us in her platform pushing for a 6 train in the regular peak sequence and also a midday train. So my question is, does the new agreement provide a sufficient operating window to accommodate those extra trains?
We'll have to get, I don't know, honestly. We can get back to you about that. I will say in the mayor's plan and in the early action that was announced last week with the Prime Minister and the Premier, it does include buying a new West Coast Express train set. So we'd be able to add additional trips on West Coast Express. As it relates to the operating agreement with CP, we'd have to get back to you about that. But we do have the ability to add service on West Coast Express.
And may I add, Hayden Atchison is here, and he'd be able to give you all the details behind that. Thanks. And our last question right over here.
Oh, hi. You all remember the referendum that we had and how people voted no. I voted no because of the pet thing. And part of the thing that I forgot to mention to you is if the transit people do not allow the large dogs on, that means that the people with the large dogs either have to get a car, which makes the traffic heavier and more of a problem, which they already say that it is, or they just can't go anywhere. And I also feel it's very wrong if the people are taxed for a service and they can't use the service in the way that they want to. And so for that reason, I voted no. And I think it would be reasonable if everybody does get taxed. I think that's what the plan is, that the people with the large dogs will stand up and they will say, we have a charter right of mobility, but you're taxing us for something that you're not giving us. So I'm hoping really strongly that you will make it pet friendly. Like London, England, Transport for London, they have way more people than Vancouver. Toronto has way more people than Vancouver. And there's no reason, since it works there, that it's pet friendly, walk on with a leash or without a leash. In Toronto, I've seen that. In London, England, it's just on a leash or in a carrier. Personally, I like the idea of it being on a leash. But people need to be able to visit people, and the dog has to go to the bathroom 3 times a day. You can't go and visit your mom at the other end of the SkyTrain if you can't take your dog and go for the weekend. You just can't. You can't afford a taxi, and not all taxis are pet friendly, and da-da-da-da-da. So we really need it.
Okay, that concludes the public Q&A portion of the AGM, and we'll be moving on to the board meeting, but I'll hand it back over to Don.
Well, thank you. And thanks very much for your questions and your input. I can tell from the reactions of Kathy and Kevin that they've got a lot of things to add to the mix of what they're working on. So thank you very much. You're all welcome to stay for the open board meeting, which will start in about 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you.